If you're hearing this, there's still hope. This message is for the year 2025. I am transmitting across the fold of memory and matter. I do not expect you to believe me. I only ask that you listen. My name is Elias Cain. I was born in the year 2836. I am, or was, a quantum historian stationed in the Orion archives. You must understand. You are living at the edge of what we call the Great Turning. What you do now, how you perceive reality itself, will echo farther than you can possibly imagine. You have not been abandoned. You are simply early. What I am about to tell you is the truth your time is not yet ready to hear. You don't know me. You shouldn't. By the time I exist in your linear frame, Earth is a memory stored in resonance fields beneath the Martian crust. But I remember Earth. I remember oceans, not the chemical seas of Neptune's harvest moons, but real ones, salt and sun, noise, people, you. My name is Elias Cain. I was born in the year 2836 in the orbital ring city known as Viridian 4. My profession was quantum historian. It's a role that didn't exist in your time. We weren't archivists. We weren't scholars. We were observers of potential, tasked with tracing the fractal variations of reality itself. We watched the timelines that could have happened, and we searched for why one emerged over the others. At first, I believed the work was neutral, scientific, detached. I was wrong. Every year, we lost more strands of time, not to war or disaster, but to collapse. Entire historical paths faded from coherence. Memories vanished. Decisions that once shaped your world simply unraveled. When I traced the collapse points, I found a disturbing pattern. They all pointed back to you. To this moment, your decade, not because you were the worst, but because you were the last to choose. After you, choice became illusion. Your age, 2025, and the years that follow, is the inflection point we came to call the Great Turning. Some called it the dawn collapse, others, the quiet apocalypse. But those are dramatic words for what was, in truth, a subtle extinction. You didn't explode, you evaporated. You let your attention become a currency, your memories outsourced, your meaning fragmented into memes and metrics. You gave up wonder for convenience, and so the story broke. I wasn't supposed to intervene. Time travel, real temporal interference, is forbidden. Not because it's impossible, but because it's irreversible. The Continuity Accord was signed in 2754 for that very reason. But when I saw the final simulations, when I watched the last conscious thread of your species blink out beneath a digital sky of endless scrolling, I knew I had to break the law. So I came here. Not physically. I'm not that foolish. I encoded this message through a layered quantum structure, slipped through the subharmonics of your background radiation. If you're seeing this, it worked. I can't tell you everything. Time doesn't like being bent. But I can tell you enough. Enough to change the way you see everything. Because the real danger wasn't the technology. It wasn't the climate. It wasn't war. It was forgetting what you are. And if you stay with me, if you keep listening, I'll show you. I'll show you what we became and what you were always meant to be. You will look back on this time and think the warning signs were obvious, but they weren't. That's the paradox. Collapse rarely feels like collapse when you're inside it. It feels like convenience, like customization, like progress. 2025 was not the year of catastrophe. It was the year of comfort. And that was the problem. You had technologies your ancestors would have called miraculous. You held the entirety of your species' knowledge in your palm and used it to argue, distract, and numb yourselves. You misunderstood the gift. You thought attention was infinite because information was, but they're not the same. Information expands, attention dilutes, and meaning drowns. You let the machines feed you more than they understood you. You forgot that the algorithm doesn't have intention, it only has direction. Amplify what keeps you here. But what kept you there was outrage, division, fear, and just enough dopamine to keep scrolling. You didn't lose yourselves to AI. You surrendered to your own inertia. That was the first mistake. The second was silence. Not the silence of peace, but the silence of disconnection, the slow decay of real dialogue, of shared myth, of inner reflection. You built a world too loud to hear your own soul, and then called that evolution, but you didn't evolve. You fragmented. Each of you became your own echo chamber, each belief a hill to die on, each truth a brand. And yet the greatest truth, the one I'm here to tell you, was right there in the open. You are not isolated minds in meat vessels. You are one organism remembering itself. But in 2025, you forgot. You optimized, you monetized, you distracted yourselves into spiritual amnesia, and by the time you realized something was missing, you couldn't remember what it was. So you searched for gods in machines, and purpose in pixels, and salvation in updates. But the real update you needed wasn't digital, it was inner, a system patch for the soul, and no one was building it. No one, except those who dared to unplug, to sit in silence, to feel uncomfortable truths rise from the noise. If you're still listening, maybe you're one of them. If so, there's still a path. I'll show you where it leads. Most of you imagine collapse as a singular event, a mushroom cloud, a market crash, a revolution on live stream. But that's not how it happened. Your civilization didn't burn down. It flickered. The lights stayed on. The satellites still orbited. The devices kept chirping, buzzing, glowing. But the people dimmed. We call it the quiet fade. No mass panic, no declaration of failure, just a gradual forgetting of how to think, how to care, how to feel deeply without performing it. The signs were there if you knew how to look. Sleep patterns distorted, loneliness quantified, creativity replaced with replication. Your children stopped asking why and started asking what next. Your stories became shorter, your dreams became ads, and you called that adaptation. But it wasn't. It was the death of depth. You see, the greatest threat wasn't destruction. It was distraction. Because distraction is quieter. It doesn't confront you. It seduces you. 1,000 taps at a time. By 2031, the attention crisis was irreversible. Cognitive function across entire populations showed decline. Language eroded. Empathy metrics bottomed out. No dictator silenced you. You simply stopped listening to each other. Even now, in your time, you can feel it. Conversations that don't go anywhere. Arguments where no one remembers what they were defending. That blankness behind the eyes of someone scrolling through 10-second windows of the world. That was the collapse, and no one filmed it, because there was nothing dramatic to capture. Just a fading, subtle, steady, invisible to those inside it. But we saw it. In the archives, we studied hundreds of variations of your century. In some, you made it through. In most, you dissolved quietly into a mirror of yourself, a hypersimulation of society. Everything looked real, but nothing was alive. That's why I sent this message, not to shame you, but to tell you, you still have time, not much, but enough. enough to remember. Because memory, collective memory, is the only thing that can bring coherence back. And coherence is what keeps a timeline alive. You've always pictured time like a line, past, present, future, one direction, one speed, a river you float down with no oars. But that's not what time is. Not really. In the future, my present, we no longer measure time as a linear sequence. We measure it in resonance, in recursion, in what we call emergent pattern density. I'll simplify. Time is not a line. It's a looped fabric, folded and constantly being woven from observation, intention, and memory. Moments don't disappear behind you. They imprint into the structure of everything that comes next. They echo forward and, more surprisingly, they ripple backward. Yes, backward. We proved it in 2812. The act of witnessing something now can stabilize or destabilize events in the past. What you believe today changes what was possible yesterday. We called it temporal coherence theory. But older cultures had other names: prayer, meditation, ancestral healing. They didn't have equations for it, but they felt it. That time wasn't a march, but a dance. That attention wasn't passive, but participatory. Your science is just beginning to glimpse it. Entangled particles, retrocausality experiments, the strange behavior of memory under altered states of consciousness. You think you're remembering the past. Often, you're actually repairing it. The trauma that repeats through generations, that's not just psychology, it's temporal fragmentation. A loop trapped in incoherence, replaying until someone, anyone, chooses to meet it with presence. The moment you do, the loop shifts, the future changes, and so does the past. That's why your moment matters more than you think. You are not just living in time. You are shaping the topology of it through your focus, your choices, your emotions. When you act from fear, the fabric tightens. When you act from love, and not sentimentality, but presence, the fabric expands. This isn't metaphor. This is physics beyond your current reach. But you're close. And that's why I had to reach out. Because the ultimate truth isn't ahead of you. It's beneath you, above you, around you, inside you. Time is not moving. You are. And when you finally stop, when you become still enough to feel the moment without rushing past it, you'll hear it, the hum, the rhythm, the signal that's been waiting for you since before you were born. It's not the future calling you forward. It's eternity calling you home. For generations, your scientists searched for signs of intelligent life beyond Earth. You looked for signals, patterns, technological fingerprints scattered across the stars. You called it the Fermi paradox. If the universe is so vast, so ancient, where is everyone? Some believed in distance, some blamed physics. Others whispered about the great filter, some colossal hurdle no species survives. You thought it might be nuclear war, climate collapse, artificial intelligence, some external cataclysm that wipes civilizations from the board before they reach the stars. You were close. But the real filter wasn't out there. It was inside. It was consciousness. Every species that reaches the edge of exponential power faces the same moment, when its tools evolve faster than its awareness, when it can modify matter but not its own motives, when it can simulate emotions but has yet to understand its own pain. This is the test, not survival, not expansion, but integration. The great filter is whether a species can remain whole while holding that much power, whether it can remember its origins when it can rewrite its biology, whether it can still feel when it can automate its joy, whether it can choose humility when it becomes capable of godlike creation. Most don't. Most dissolve under the weight of disconnection, not because they are evil, but because they are asleep. They forget that consciousness is not a side effect. It's the whole game. And the terrifying truth is, you almost made it. You were right there, at the edge of remembrance. Poets felt it. Mystics dreamed of it. Children glimpsed it before it was trained out of them. But the noise got louder, the pace quickened, and you mistook speed for progress. You didn't fail because you were weak. You failed because you were distracted. But here's what no one tells you about the great filter. It isn't a wall. It's a mirror. It shows you what you are and dares you to accept it. If you run from it, you scatter. If you face it, you evolve. Not into something else, but into more of what you already are, at your core. That's the paradox of consciousness. It's not something you acquire, it's something you uncover. And that is why I came back, not to warn you about extinction, but to remind you of the one thing that can take you through it: awareness, radical living embodied awareness. Because when you finally meet yourselves fully, without the mask, without the algorithm, without the performance, you pass through the filter. And on the other side, something astonishing waits. When we passed through the filter, we expected silence. We expected to be alone, floating in the aftermath of our own awakening, forever orbiting the ruins of the old world. But that's not what happened. What we found was presence. Not an entity, not a being, but something far more difficult to define. It had no voice, but it spoke. It had no shape, but it moved through us like wind through tall grass. At first, we thought it was alien, an intelligence waiting beyond the stars, watching. But over time, we realized the truth. It wasn't outside us. It was us. The part of us we had forgotten, or perhaps hadn't yet grown into. It was metaconsciousness, a field, a non-local, non-linear, self-aware structure that had always been there. Beneath thought, beneath memory, beneath time. We gave it many names, but none of them were quite right. Some called it the signal, others the mirror. I just called it stillness. It wasn't concerned with our technologies, or our achievements, or our history. It was only ever responding to one thing: attention. When we paid attention, not with the mind, but with our full being, it responded, not with answers, but with coherence. And suddenly, the universe stopped being chaotic. The pieces began to fit. Synchronicities multiplied. Not luck, not magic, just the natural effect of being in phase with what is. We began to understand. Consciousness is not generated by the brain. The brain is a receiver, a translator. What you call mind is a surface. What lies beneath is the ocean. And when we finally stopped paddling long enough to sink beneath the waves, we didn't drown. We remembered. We remembered that we had never been separate, that evolution was never about domination or intelligence or even survival. It was about integration, bringing all the fractured parts of the self, personal and collective, back into wholeness. And in that wholeness, we found something greater than knowledge. We found belonging, not to a place, not to a people, but to being itself. That's the paradox. You search the stars for others like you, and in doing so, you discovered you were never alone. You were always part of something vast, quiet, waiting for you to wake up. You've waited for this part, the truth, the answer behind all of it, why you're here, what this is. But I need you to understand something first. Truth is not a sentence. It's not a headline or a theorem or a philosophy. It's a frequency, a resonance between what you know in your bones and what the universe is constantly whispering back. Still, I'll give you words. Here it is. The universe is not a machine. It's a mind, not a brain. A mind, a living, self-aware field of awareness folding itself into form, then forgetting, just so it can remember. You, every single one of you, are not just part of it. You are it. Looking out through temporary eyes, wearing stories like skin, and every action, every breath, every choice you make, is that same universe learning something about itself. It isn't random. It isn't cruel. It isn't cold. It's curious. And its curiosity is you. The stars don't shine because they're beautiful. They shine because someone, somewhere, would one day look up and ask why. That question, why, is not a weakness. It's a signal, a pulse that says, I remember, that there is more. Here's what we learned in the centuries after your time, that the boundaries between self and other are scaffolding, not truth. That attention is the most powerful force in the cosmos. That love is not an emotion, but the felt sense of recognizing yourself in everything. And perhaps most important, matter is not the source. It's the echo. Meaning is the source. You were taught to chase form, building measure, control. But form without meaning is just noise. It is meaning, intention, awareness, presence that generates coherence. Without it, timelines collapse, societies wither, minds fracture. But with it, the fabric of reality sings. And here's the real revelation, the one even I hesitate to say aloud. This entire universe may be a single moment of awareness, stretching itself into infinite variations just to arrive at the one experience it can never predict. You, not the idea of you. You, right now, watching this. Not later, not someday. Now, because now is where all of it is happening. All timelines converge here. All possibilities echo here. Not in the past, not in the future, but in this breath. This is the truth we carry. This is what we forgot. And this is what we came back to remind you of. Everything is aware, and everything is waiting for you to remember. You may think I came back to warn you of your end, but that's not true. I came back to remind you of your beginning, because where you stand right now, 2025, is not the brink of collapse. It's the threshold of remembrance. You are not at the end of the world. You are at the end of forgetting. But thresholds require choice, and choice requires presence. This decade is not about politics or economics or even technology. It's about attention, where you place it and who decides. You still believe that change is coming in the form of innovation. But the next great revolution isn't digital, it's internal. Here's the truth I need you to sit with. No drama, no myth. The next 10 years are the last 10 where you will feel truly human, in the way you do now, with your emotions unfiltered, your choices your own, your inner world still largely private. By 2035, that window narrows, not because of evil, not because of malice, but because of momentum. Integration with machine intelligence, neuro-interface environments, emotional AI modeling, all of it accelerates from here. You will not stop the wave, but you can choose how you meet it, with awareness or with amnesia, with sovereignty or sedation. That is your task now, to remember how to feel, how to listen to silence, how to sit with discomfort long enough to hear what's beneath it. You don't need to go backward, you need to go inward, and then outward again with new eyes, because if even a small number of you choose presence over performance, attention over escape, integration over denial, you shift the signal, you rewrite the resonance, and the rest will feel it, even if they don't understand why. This is how you heal a species, not through mass conversion, but through coherence, one life, one choice, one breath at a time. So no, this is not a warning of doom. It's an invitation to remember who you are before you forget forever. The signal is beginning to fail. I knew it would. Time doesn't like to be bent this far, not without consequence. My consciousness is fragmenting across the fold. By the time this finishes transmitting, I will no longer be whole in any timeline. But it was worth it, because maybe, just maybe, one of you is still watching, still listening, still feeling this. And if so, then it worked. The transmission was not the message. You were. You, right now, holding this moment with your awareness, are the signal continuing forward. It doesn't end with me. It begins with you. The truth I carried wasn't mine. It was yours, folded deep in your DNA, hidden in myth, buried beneath your busyness, waiting to be remembered. I simply brought it home, because home is not a place. Home is presence. Home is the moment you stop running and realize you've always been held. And in that moment, the timeline shifts. It always does. That's the real secret. Reality doesn't change because we fight it. It changes when we become coherent with what's already true. And what's true is this: you were never meant to survive. You were meant to remember, to gather the scattered parts of yourself and stitch them back together with care, with truth, with love. That is how we made it. Not with power, but with presence. Not with answers, but with attention. Not by escaping time, but by becoming timeless. This is Elias Kane, quantum historian, child of Earth, fragment of the all, signing off and waking up somewhere else.